Once Birbal went to Persia at the invitation of that country's king. Parties were extended in his honor and rich gifts heaped up near him. On the eve of his departure to home, a nobleman asked him how he would compare the king of Persia with his own king. Birbal said, "Your king is the full moon, whereas mine could be like a quarter moon." The Persians got very happy to hear this analogy. Now Birbal got home and he found that Emperor Akbar was furious with him. He demanded angrily, "How could you belittle your own king? You are a traitor." Birbal said politely, "No, your majesty, no. I cannot belittle you. What I said there meant the full moon diminishes and disappears onward, while the quartered moon grows gradually day by day. What I, in fact, wanted to tell the world that your power is growing day by day while the king of Persia's is about to decline now." Akbar grunted in satisfaction and welcomed Birbal back from his journey with a warm embrace. One day King Akbar said to Birbal, "Birbal, my people are very obedient to me. They love me very much." Birbal smiled and replied, "This is true, but they fear you too, Jahanpanah." Akbar could not agree on this, so it was decided that Birbal's statement should be tested. Next day, according to Birbal's instructions, the king announced that he would be going for hunting, and people should pour a pot of milk in a tub kept in the courtyard. Next day when Akbar returned from hunting, he found that there was no milk in the tub, instead there was only water. Akbar got very disappointed, but couldn't do anything. Then Birbal said, "This time you will announce that you will come back and see the tub yourself." King did as Birbal said. Once again the tub was kept in the courtyard. This time when King returned from the hunting, he found the tub overflowing with milk. Birbal said, "I told you. It is your fear which made people obey you. The first time there was no one to check the tub, so people poured the water, but the second time, they knew that you would check yourself, that is why they brought the milk." One day a scholar came to the court of Emperor Akbar and challenged Birbal to answer his questions and thus prove that he was as clever as people said he was. He asked Birbal, "Would you prefer to answer 100 easy questions or just a single difficult one?" Both the emperor and Birbal had had a difficult day and were impatient to leave. "Ask me one difficult question," said Birbal. "Well, then, tell me," said the man, "which came first into the world, the chicken or the egg?" "The chicken," replied Birbal. "How do you know?" asked the scholar, a note of triumph in his voice. "We had agreed you would ask only one question and you have already asked it," said Birbal, and he and the emperor walked away leaving the scholar gaping. As usual, a lot of people were present in Akbar's durbar. A famous astrologer had come from a faraway country. He was talking about the solar system and the Earth's shape. At one point Akbar said, "If the Earth is round, and if one travels straight towards one direction, he will come back to the same spot from where he has started the journey." "Theoretically it is correct," said the astrologer. "Why not in real life?" asked the king. "One has to cross oceans, mountains and forests to keep the path straight," the astrologer said. "Sail through the oceans, make tunnels in the mountains and use elephants to cross the forests." Akbar found the solution. "Still it is impossible," said the astrologer. "Why?" asked Akbar. "It may take years to complete the whole journey," said the astrologer. "Yes. How many?" asked Akbar. "I don't know. Maybe 100 years or more," said the astrologer. "Don't worry, I will ask my ministers. They have an answer for everything." Akbar looked at the ministers. "Impossible to calculate. Around 25 years. 50 years or less. 80 days. Why, Birbal, you haven't uttered a word." The king showed his surprise at Birbal's silence. "I was just calculating the time required to go round the earth," explained Birbal. "And did you get the answer?" asked the king. "Sure," said Birbal, "it will take just one day." Just one day. Birbal, it is impossible. Even it will take more than one day to cross our country. Said Akbar. It is possible. Provided you travel at the speed of the sun, said Birbal with a smile. Akbar loved hunting and used to escape to go for hunting even from his studies. Well, later he became a better rider and hunter than any one of his courtiers. One day when Akbar went for hunting, he and some of the courtiers went so fast that they left the others behind. As the evening fell, everybody got very hungry and thirsty. They found that they had lost their way and now did not know where to go. At last they came to a junction of 3 roads. King was very happy to see the roads that now he could go reach his capital through one of these roads, but which road was to go to his capital, Agra? They were all thinking about it and could not decide it. In the meantime they saw a young boy coming along one road. The boy was summoned and Akbar asked him, "Hey young boy, which road goes to Agra?" The boy smiled and spoke, "Hazur, everybody knows that road cannot move, so how these roads can go to Agra or anywhere else?" And laughed at his own joke. Everybody was silent, didn't say a word. The boy said again, "People travel, not the roads. Do they?" Emperor laughed at this and said, "No, you are right." The emperor asked again, "What is your name, young boy?" Mahesh Das, the boy replied and asked the emperor, "And who are you, Hazur? What is your name?" The emperor took out his ring and gave it to the boy. "You are talking to Emperor Akbar, the king of Hindustan, India. We need fearless people like you. You come to the court, with this ring I will recognize you immediately. Now tell me the way to get to Agra. We have to reach there soon." Mahesh Das bowing lowly pointed towards the road going to Agra, and the king headed on that road. That is how the Emperor Akbar met the future Birbal. Emperor Akbar's court was famous for its witty question and answer sessions. On one of these occasions, the emperor asked Birbal if there was anything that the sun and the moon could not see. Birbal's reply was darkness. Akbar was pleased. Next, he asked what was the difference between a truth and a lie. To which Birbal replied that it was the distance between the ears and the eyes, because what you see with your eyes is true, but what you hear with your ears is generally false. Akbar was satisfied. Lastly, Emperor Akbar drew a line on the floor and asked Birbal to shorten it without wiping out the ends. Birbal drew a longer line below the line drawn by Akbar and remarked that though he had not rubbed off the original line, he had definitely succeeded in making it shorter. There lived a blind saint in an ashram in the kingdom of Emperor Akbar. He was believed to prophesy the future correctly. Once he had a visitor who had come to treat their niece. The child's parents were killed in front of the girl's eyes. Once she saw the saint, she started to scream loudly, saying that that saint was the culprit. Angered by the girl's words, the saint demanded the couple to get away with their child. The whole day the girl cried, which made the couple to realize that the girl was not lying. Therefore, they decided to seek the help of Birbal. Birbal consoled them and asked them to wait at the emperor's assembly. Birbal had invited the saint to Akbar's court too. Then in front of all the ministers he drew a sword and neared the saint to kill him. The saint in bewilderment immediately drew another sword and began to fight. Thus by this act of the saint it was proved that he wasn't blind. Therefore, Akbar demanded to hang the culprit and rewarded the girl for her bravery for telling the truth even at the critical situation. As you all know, Emperor Akbar was very impressed with Birbal's wisdom and greatly enjoyed his quick wit. One fine morning when Akbar was especially pleased with Birbal, as a gesture of appreciation, he promised to reward him with many valuable and beautiful gifts. However, many days passed, and still there was no sign of even one gift. Birbal was quite disappointed with the king. Then one day, when Akbar was strolling down the banks of river Yamuna with his ever-faithful Birbal at his side, he happened to notice a camel passing by. He asked Birbal why the neck of the camel was crooked. Birbal thought for a second and promptly replied that it might be because the camel may have forgotten to honor a promise. The holy books mention that those who break their word get punished with a crooked neck. Perhaps that was the reason for the camel's crooked neck. Akbar soon realized his folly of making a promise to Birbal for gifts and not honoring it. He was ashamed of himself. As soon as they returned to the palace, he immediately gave Birbal his justly deserved reward. As you can see, Birbal always managed to get what he wanted without directly asking for it. One day Emperor Akbar asked Birbal what he would choose if he were given a choice between justice and a gold coin. "The gold coin," said Birbal. Akbar was taken aback. "You would prefer a gold coin to justice?" he asked, incredulously. "Yes, Jahanpanah," said Birbal. The other courtiers were also amazed by Birbal's display of idiocy. For years they had been trying to discredit Birbal in the emperor's eyes but without success, and now the man had gone and done it himself. They could not believe their good fortune. "I would have been dismayed if even the lowliest of my servants had said this," continued the emperor. "But coming from you, it's shocking, and sad. I did not know you were so debased." "One asks only for what one does not have, Your Majesty," said Birbal, quietly. "You have seen to it that in our country justice is available to everybody. So as the justice is already available to me also, and as I'm always short of money, I said I would choose the gold coin." The emperor was so pleased with Birbal's reply that he gave him not only 1 but 1,000 gold coins. Since Birbal always outwitted Akbar, Akbar thought of a plan to make Birbal look like a fool. He gave 1 egg to each of his ministers before Birbal reached the court one morning. So when Birbal arrived, the king narrated a dream he had had the previous night, saying that he would be able to judge the honesty of his ministers if they were able to bring back an egg from the royal garden pond. So, Akbar asked all his courtiers to go to the pond, one at a time, and return with an egg. So, one by one, all his ministers went to the pond and returned with the egg which he had previously given them. Then it was Birbal's turn. He jumped into the pond and could find no eggs. He finally realized that the king was trying to play a trick on him. So he entered the court crowing like a cock. The emperor asked him to stop making that irritating noise and then asked him for the egg. Birbal smiled and replied that only hens lay eggs, and as he was a cock, he could not produce an egg. Everyone laughed loudly, and the king realized that Birbal could never be easily fooled. Birbal had an unparalleled sense of wit. It was his sense of intelligence and wit that brought Birbal so close to the emperor. One day Akbar was in quite a relaxed mood and was enjoying the company of Birbal. Suddenly the emperor spread his both palm and noticed that there was no hair on his palms. He asked, "Birbal, can you tell me why there is no hair on my palms?" Birbal gave a pleasing answer, "Jahanpanah, the reason is very simple. Every day you donate generously to the poor and needy people with both of your hands. How can hair grow on such giving palms?" Akbar was pleased with his answer. However, the king decided to pull his leg for giving such a pleasing answer, so he asked him again, "If it's so, then why there is no hair on your palm?" Birbal at once replied, "Jahanpanah, its reason is very simple. Hair of my palm has vanished due to continuous acceptance of gifts and rewards from you." The clever answer of Birbal made the emperor more eager to outfit Birbal. So he asked again, "Now you must tell me why there is no hair on the hands of other courtiers." Birbal was too smart to be outwitted by anybody. He promptly answered, "Your Majesty, the answer is obvious. Wherever I get rewards from you, the other courtiers rub their hands out of disappointment and envy. The continuous rub does not allow the hair to grow on their hands. Now Akbar had no question to ask him. He was indeed very pleased by his answers. One day, one man wanted to punish a man named Hassan. He accused him of stealing his necklace, and reported this theft in the police. The case was brought in the judge's court. Judge knew Hassan very well, and he also knew that he was not a thief. So he asked the man, "Why do you think that Hassan has stolen your necklace?" The man replied, "Your Honor, I have seen him stealing the necklace." Hassan said, "I am innocent, Your Honor. I do not know anything about his necklace." The man then said, "All right, if he is innocent, let him prove his innocence. Let me bring the hot iron, and if he can hold it in his bare hands, then I will agree that he has not stolen my necklace, and he is speaking truth." The man said, "It means that if I am speaking the truth, then I will not burn my hands with that red-hot iron." "Yes, you are right. God will protect you." Now Hassan could not do anything but to hold red-hot iron in his hands to prove his innocence, and that he was speaking the truth. He asked judge to give him 1 day to look for that necklace again. The judge gave him permission. He went home. He took advice from Birbal. He returned next day. He came back and said, "I am ready for that, sir, if you think so. But the same thing should apply to him too. If he is speaking the truth, then the red-hot iron should not burn his hands also. So let him bring that red-hot iron holding in his both hands, then I will hold that iron in my bare hands." Now the man was speechless. He told the judge that he would go and search his necklace again in his house, maybe it was misplaced somewhere there, bowed hastily and went away. King Akbar was very fond of Birbal. This made a certain courtier very jealous. Now this courtier always wanted to be chief minister, but this was not possible as Birbal filled that position. One day Akbar praised Birbal in front of the courtier. This made the courtier very angry, and he said that the king praised Birbal unjustly, and if Birbal could answer 3 of his questions, he would accept the fact that Birbal was intelligent. Akbar, always wanting to test Birbal's wit, readily agreed. The 3 questions were: 1. How many stars are there in the sky? 2. Where is the center of the earth? And 3. How many men and how many women are there in the world? Immediately Akbar asked Birbal the 3 questions and informed him that if he could not answer them, he would have to resign as chief minister. To answer the first question, Birbal brought a hairy sheep and said, "There are as many stars in the sky as there is hair on the sheep's body. My friend the courtier is welcome to count them if he likes." To answer the second question, Birbal drew a couple of lines on the floor and bore an iron rod in it and said, "This is the center of the earth. The courtier may measure it himself if he has any doubts." In answer to the third question, Birbal said counting the exact number of men and women in the world would be a problem, as there are some specimens like our courtier friend here who cannot easily be classified as either. Therefore, if all people like him are killed, then and only then can one count the exact number.